Making headlines tonight, education officials pleased with the COVID-19 protocols in today's Common Entrance examination. Prime Minister Motley calls for a conversation on reparations. Ghana's chief elections officer refuses to submit the report. And coming up in sports, Jermaine Blackwood says he was the man for the job in the win in the first test for the West Indies.
Newsnight Headlines was brought to you compliments Omega XL.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. While the topic of reparations may be a difficult one to tackle, it is a conversation that needs to be held. This from Prime Minister Mia Motley as she appeared on Good Morning Britain in the UK television station today. She says the CARICOM Reparations Commission's 10-point plan focuses on what is needed going forward, including an apology from the former colonist countries. Prime Minister Motley says other key issues to be dealt with are the public health and particularly the debt fallout, with the English-speaking Caribbean being one of the world's most indebted regions.
Gone into the COVID pandemic, it's become exceptionally difficult for a lot of these countries to be able to raise money on their own because of the high debt burden that they carry, not because of any wickedness, but already because they want to be able to put in place a development compact for their people that was not given to their people prior to independence, and the resources were not left for us to do so in a way that the compensation took place at emancipation.
Prime Minister Motley says a focus must also be placed on the psychological aspect of the region's colonial past.
It is the mental emancipation, it's the use of things like blacklisting of Caribbean countries, or it's the use of and other countries for tax or other purposes. It's the use of this kind of language that associates negative with black and positive with white. And then when you start to look at the difficulties in the United States of America with respect to policing and access into basic services, or what it takes to have persons struck from voters' lists, all of these are things that deprive ordinary people from the promise of development that should be all of ours.
After international and local lockdowns due to the COVID-19 pandemic, several weeks of virtual and face-to-face classes, thousands of Class 4 students across the country have finally written the Barbados Secondary School Entrance Examination. That test, which facilitates the transition from primary to secondary school, was rescheduled from May 5th until today. Our Rianne Phillips visited some examination centers across the country and filed this report.
The scene outside many exam centers this morning was completely different to previous years. Students wearing face masks and face shields were stopped at the gates for temperature checks and to be sanitized, all in keeping with the COVID-19 protocols. The measures also extended to the classrooms where the tests were being written.
The rooms are as 10 per room, so there's no bunching or anything like that. There's adequate spacing. The rooms have been set up such that when they finish the exam for the lunch break, they don't have to leave the room. Their bags are already set up along the back wall as per lunchroom. So just leave one area, collect their bags, get their lunch, and come back to the table and have their lunch right there. We have provisions in place for the bathrooms as well. We're sticking to the protocol. It says no more than 3. There's sanitizing stations inside the bathroom and as well as they come outside, and then when they get back to the classroom.
And candidates with special needs were not left out.
We have some 7-8 students here who are now taking the extra time. They're being covered by at least, when I left the room, we had at least 9 persons covering the room. We have readers for every person that needs a reader and the 2 sign language persons. And then we have 3 invigilators with each of those. So therefore, everybody's been made comfortable.
Education Minister Santia Bradshaw was pleased with this morning's execution.
But I think generally in terms of the systems that we've put in place, the parents are following them as well as our staff as well, and certainly the students, they're all masked up. They understand the protocols, and so far I haven't had any reports that we've had any challenges at the centres. So I suspect today will definitely go relatively well.
Just after 1 this afternoon, it was all over. Anxious faces replaced by smiles, hugs and kisses from parents.
It was easy, it was fun. I had a little bit of trouble with a problem, but I got it worked out. It was good, but mathematics is pretty hard.
It was good. Once I got into the room, I felt fine and I was confident, and it wasn't really I wasn't really nervous. It was pretty good. I'm pretty confident.
The comprehension and the English was easy, and the math was in between. But I got through it and it was good. It was good, but the math, it was in between. I thought the exam was going to be hard, but the English was easy, and then the math was so. The English was easy, and the mathematics was a little bit hard, but I got through with it.
Despite the changes that were introduced this year for the Barbados Secondary School entrance examination, parents across the country still stuck to the tradition of treating their children after the test. One of the popular spots was Copacabana Beach Club on Bay Street.
This is fairly safe. You can have the social distancing, not many opportunities for being close to each other. You can have this space. So I think the sea would be the most appropriate place for them to be.
I think we have just over about 120 bookings. I think it's not bad. I'm very happy and grateful for it. Today we want to make extra special, so we created some activities, some games, a game room, a dance room, a boat with slides and trampolines, and we did a special today so everyone come together, have a good time, because everyone really, I'm sure after being locked up for so long, is just happy to get out.
The examination results are expected in the coming weeks. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Construction company Innotech Services Limited has donated approximately $75,000 worth of equipment and supplies to the Ministry of Education to assist with its virtual classes and in-person exams. The items were presented by Innotech Chairman Anthony De Silva.
This donation of 40 Chromebook laptop computers, 1,000 protective face shields, a thermographic camera and scanner for mass screening, and 60-number medical grade infrared non-contact thermometers, all valued at about 75,000 Barbados dollars. Minister, our donation represents the Innotech Group's commitment to supporting the educational efforts in Barbados, as well as the health and safety of our nation's children.
Education Minister Santia Bradshaw thanked the company for the timely donation.
The donation today is timely, given that we have some examinations pending, and it is also timely because we are continuing to ensure that in the event that there's a second wave for COVID-19, that this ministry is as prepared as it can be to ensure that children are not left behind as a result of not having a device that is accessible to them.
4 people have been displaced after the firebug struck on Princess Royal Avenue in St. Michael. CBC understands the blaze started at an uninsured house around 21 minutes to 11 this morning. 2 water tenders and 7 officers under the command of Divisional Officer Mervyn Mears responded to the blaze. One of the occupants has been speaking about the incident.
I was sitting and I went to the kitchen to get something from the fridge, and then all of a sudden I heard an explosion. And when I went towards my daughter's bedroom, I saw there was on fire, the bed was on fire.
The cause of the blaze remains under investigation. Meanwhile, Mr. Mears has reminded Barbadians to be vigilant in protecting their homes from fire.
Make sure that the fans that you have plugged in and you're leaving home, or you're in the house and the fan is working, unplug it, so that you need to protect your home. If you have the stove light, always pay attention to the stove.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley has joined an international chorus of female leaders urging world leaders to address the human crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ms. Motley again highlighted the challenges posed to small states and the injustice of some countries being deemed superior and others inferior. She says this cannot continue. The Prime Minister was one of the panelists of the high-level political forum Women Rise for All.
I use that language not in any contentious way, but as part of our reality that we face every day. Over the course of this pandemic, I've found myself having to communicate across the Caribbean, reminding persons that our duty is to stay focused on mission. And what is the mission? That we want to create a people who are committed, who are creative, who are conscious, who equally are caring. And that we do so not because of the circumstances that we want to have, but we do so against the backdrop of our reality. What is practical, and what is it that allows us to move people to the next level?
Prime Minister Motley adds caring and moral leadership will make a fundamental difference.
It is that ability to listen, it's that ability to speak truth to power without rancor that is going to make the fundamental difference of whether we can move the world and our countries and our families and our communities from here to the next level. And if we can do that, then we rise. And sometimes the best way of rising is claiming ground, pausing and breathing, and then moving again and claiming ground. And that's what we in the Caribbean have had to master, because we don't come with all of the resources of others, but we come with the commitment, the creativity, the consciousness, and above all else, the capacity to care.
United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed says female leaders have risen to the forefront during the pandemic, taking charge and recording success in the fight.
Over the past few months, people around the world have come to see what many of us already know. Women's leadership has made a profound difference. The evidence has shown in country after country how governments led by women have been more effective in flattening the curve and positioning for economic recovery. We've seen even more press coverage profiling the rock star status of our local health officials, and I'm really pleased that we have two such rock stars on our show today. Time and time again, observers have highlighted the qualities that have made for such effective leadership: clear communication, compassion, inclusion, evidence-based policies, and of course, last but not least, the courage of conviction.
Former President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, wants efforts to continue to push forward with the Sustainable Development Goals for the Decade of Action.
The SDGs have been made even more relevant, and now all can see the need for their universal application. But will we use the magnifying lens which reveals so much in a way that makes the reality seem far away? Or will we use it, as some did in the past, to light a fire, an inner fire that will no longer accept injustice, which will recognize that patriarchy, racism, and inequalities are interlinked, and that a better and different world cannot be built without ending all three.
UNICEF champion for children and member of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, Faith Marshall-Harris, says children's rights will remain under threat once climate change is an issue. She raised the point during a global youth summit network on climate change and health organized by the Ashley Lashley Foundation. She says more advocacy is needed on these issues.
I want, however, to recommend that the participation of children and young people is vital. They have the most to lose in this particular battle, so I want to urge them to be fully involved and to take this on as an issue that is very important to them. It was stressed by the CRC at a recent DGD that environmental harm can and does interfere with full enjoyment of a vast range of children's rights, and therefore countries have to take steps to protect people from harm.
Mrs. Marshall Harris adds the Convention of the Rights of the Child guarantees a number of important rights and is one of the few instruments that requires states to take steps to protect the environment.
That is in Article 24(2), which speaks to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health for every child. It says that state parties should pursue full implementation of this right, and in particular take appropriate measures to combat disease, malnutrition, taking into consideration the dangers and risks of environmental pollution.
Checking in with our regional neighbors now. The meeting of the 7-member Guyana Elections Commission, which was scheduled for 2 o'clock today, has been postponed. The move comes after an APNU AFC supporter filed a case in the High Court to have the declaration of the elections blocked. A report from iNews in Ghana indicates that the Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, who was given a final chance to submit his elections report today using the recount figures, has once again failed to do so. According to information received, the CEO also refused to say whether he has completed the report as ordered by the GCOM Chair, Justice Claudette Singh. Reports indicate that the government-aligned commissioners walked out of the meeting when the CEO was requested to present the report. Meanwhile, the case filed by the APNU AFC supporter comes up for hearing before the Chief Justice, Roxanne George, at 10 o'clock tomorrow. In the meantime, supporters of the APNU and AFC coalition continue to call for the Ghana Elections Commission to use the report submitted by the Chief Elections Officer to swear in President David Granger for a second term. They say any concerns raised by aggrieved parties can be addressed by way of elections petition. More in this NCN report.
That was the scene on Main Street, Georgetown on Monday as GCOM met to discuss the Chief Elections Officer elections report. APNU AFC supporters echoed calls for the GCOM chair to declare David Granger as president for a second term based on the report submitted by the Chief Elections Officer and in keeping with the law. On Sunday, protesters in Linden, while observing COVID-19 guidelines, lined the street of Republic Avenue with their placards. They too echoed calls for the GCOM chair to respect the Constitution.
We are basically in a state of crisis. We have no money to man the affairs of this country, and this election episode has gone on far too long, and it is time that the chairman of GCOM act and honor our constitutional responsibility and act only upon the advice given by the CEO in the report that has already been submitted.
In Jamaica, the expected visitor arrivals for July is expected to move the tourism sector's earnings to $80 million. That's according to Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett, who says the sector is on the path to recovery.
The tourism sector is making steady progress on its road to recovery, with borders now open and more visitors booking flights to Jamaica. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett is now predicting more inflow of foreign exchange.
We have welcomed just a little over 35,000 visitors since the opening in June 15. And we expect to have another 30 or so thousand at the end of July. And that would bring us somewhere in the region of about $80 million foreign exchange.
This is expected to have a positive impact on the tourism sector, which has suffered from the downturn in business as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Borders were closed to incoming travelers on March 24 and reopened to international travelers on June 15 with new safety protocols in place.
I must tell you that I got a video message from a worker at one of our hotels. The first morning that she welcomed the first guests to the hotel. And it pulled tears to my eyes when she said, "I'm excited because I have hope." And that's what the reopening of the tourism sector provides for people, for the workers.
School children in Trinidad and Tobago are to return to school on September 1st. COVID-19 guidelines are being drawn up for teachers and children.
In a release from the Education Ministry, it states that the first term is scheduled to run for 15 weeks between September 1st to December 11th, 2020. At a press conference on Monday, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Roshan Parasram said COVID-19 prevention guidelines for teachers and students will be handed over to the Education Ministry this Wednesday. He said consideration will also be given to high-risk children among the student population.
We deal with it by age stratification, which is based on a UNICEF document, as well as high-risk students, which is more along the CDC lines, but we're pulling both of them together, and there would be how we deal with high-risk individuals as well.
Dr. Parasram did indicate, however, the Health Ministry's position regarding the wearing of face masks at school.
We do not recommend at this point for the students, at least, to be wearing masks or face shields during normal hours. Teachers, possibly, to have a recommendation based on the level of interaction that they're having. There's different categories of teachers. PE teachers, for instance, may be different from your regular form teacher.